So I believe the title of this week's talk is how to. Sharmani, you can help me with the title.
Title is this one.
How to conquer lust.
Lust to Pema through the ancient Bhagavad Gita teaching.
Yeah. Okay. How to change lust into kama, lust into prema, love, to the teachings of the ancient scriptures, Bhagavad Gita.
咁今個星期我哋嘅講課咧就係講到點樣將呢個色欲加埋轉做一個對 Krishna 透過奉獻服務至少對 Krishna 嘅愛咧，係通過呢個古老嘅智慧。
And this is discussed in the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
咁呢一個描述咧就響第3章嘅差唔多近尾嘅詩詞裏邊有講到。
And there's one specific verse that it's a question by Arjuna.
咁呢度咧有一個特別一個提問啊，由阿朱那係提出嘅。
Text 36 of chapter 3.
第3章第36個詩句。
Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts even unwillingly as if engaged by force?
阿朱那問 Vishnu 嘅後裔啊，是什麼在驅使人們身不由己地作惡呢？
So Krishna answers that in the 37th verse.
咁 Krishna 由第37個詩節就咁樣回答。
Text 37, chapter 3.
第3章第37節。
Did you find the verse? Did you read it?
咁第37節譯文就係至尊嚴嘅手信説，僅僅是物質慾望愛尊啊，與激情屬性接觸產生物質嘅慾望，物質慾望繼而轉為憤怒，物質慾望是世界上吞沒一切嘅罪惡大敵。
So Krishna replies, he says, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world.
咁 Krishna 就咁講到，僅係物質嘅慾望啦，阿尊啊，以物質嘅情節觸之後，生物產生咗慾望，物質嘅慾望跟住轉為憤怒，物質嘅慾望係世界上吞沒一切嘅罪惡大敵。
What was that? That's the verse again? Oh, okay. I could catch one word at night help. So this what would you call it? This how the living entity comes in contact with this is also described in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 62 and 63. 2nd chapter, text 62, 63.
咁喺第2章嘅第62、63個枝節入邊講到身體係點樣係接觸到呢方面嘅。
First Krishna tells Arjuna that if you can restrain the senses and keep them under control, then we become known as a person of steady intelligence.
咁 Krishna 首先同阿尊嚟講咧，一個人如果能夠將感官係喺佢自己受控制之下嚟講咧，咁佢就係一個處於一個堅定狀態嘅人。
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare It might be easier for the phone if we, yeah, that's, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't pull on the phone. I would say, how many Hare Krishnas does it take to put a phone on the phone stand? With recording, so you have to be careful. So text 62 in chapter 2, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Text 63, from anger complete delusion arises, and from delusion bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
第二章第62嘅詩節，注視或種想念感官嘅對象，就會產生依附，由呢種嘅依附會產生對物質享樂嘅慾望，由物質嘅慾望而產生出憤怒喺度，由憤怒導致跟第63個詩節，由憤怒導致錯覺，錯覺使記憶迷亂，當記憶迷亂時，智力就喪失，智力一喪失，人就重新墮入物質嘅泥潭。
So going over the commentary or the purport on these first two verses, 36 and 37, I'll just say a few things because the living entity, as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are originally spiritual. Of course, we're originally spiritual and pure, but we're actually freed from the material contaminations of this world. Our nature is truly spiritual by nature.
喺第62同埋63嘅小意志咁提到啦，我哋本身生物體嚟講係純粹嘅，係唔會受呢個物質嘅影響嘅。你原本你本身係純粹。
And one of the things we were discussing the other day on the advent of the Bhagavad Gita was that the nature of this world, the nature of the soul, is not to be subjected to the sins of the material world or the negative aspects of the material world. That's not our nature.
咁上次喺博家棒嘅氣日啦，我哋提到一點，原本個靈魂嚟講個本性嚟講，唔應該受制呢個物質嘅世界物質能量嘅罪惡，係受制於呢種咁嘅能量底下。
But when we misuse our independence, which Krishna has given us, then we fall. I don't like the word victim, but I'll use it that we fall victim and we act in many sinful ways without even thinking about it.
但係由於我哋係誤用咗 Krishna 俾我種咁嘅自由嘅意願啦，所以我唔想用嗰個字，佢就係受害者喺度。咁事實上我哋就係受呢個不情願嘅底下嚟講，我作出呢個罪惡嘅決定，係變成一個受害者。
As Arjuna in his question said, as if being engaged by force, something else is causing him to act this way.
咁就好似阿 Arjuna 佢睇到個問題嚟講，佢唔能夠自主咁係做出啲咁嘅行為喺度，而係有一啲嘢係令到佢咁樣去做。
So Prabhupada explains that this question is very appropriate because it's something that each and every one of us faces every day.
咁Prabhupada嚟講啊，係解釋得係好恰當嘅，而係我哋每日都係要面對緊。
So what impels us to sinful activities, as if engaged by force? Krishna tells Arjuna it is lust only.
咁 Krishna 講就究竟乜嘢係強迫我哋嚟講係做呢啲我唔願意做嘢嚟講咧？咁 Krishna 講到呢樣嘢就係色欲。
And this leads to the mode of passion, which engages us and just creates like a sense of anger when it goes down. I'll erase that one. What it does is that when we contact material energy, our eternal love for Krishna that is within the heart is transformed into lust or desire.
咁當我哋原本嗰個靈性嗰個慾望嚟嘅，當同呢個物質嘅一個能量接觸嚟講咧，呢種嘅靈性講咧轉化成呢個物質世界一個色慾。
And as the verse states, in association with the mode of passion, this mode of passion is very not a healthy state for the person aspiring for spiritual advancement.
咁好似接嚟講，當我哋同呢個激情屬性係接觸嗰時嚟講，感覺個呢個其實呢個唔係響一個靈修方面一個好健康嘅狀況底下。
So our natural position or our sense of love of Godhead becomes transformed into, we'll use the word desire, seems a little less aggressive, or lust or desire. Our natural love for Krishna is transformed into lust or desire.
咁我哋個原本嗰個原本狀態個咁嘅對 Krishna 嘅慾望個愛，而家轉化成呢個物質嘅一個慾望、物質嘅色欲。
Papa gives the example, just like if milk is touched by sour tamarind, it becomes yogurt.
咁聖泡提呢個講到個例子就好似酸奶咧，係俾得酸嘅螺紋紙接觸之後嚟講，就變成係乳酪。
So in the same way, when the living entity is touched by material energy, that prema converts or changes to desire, kama, or lust for material energy.
就好似生物體當接觸能量嚟講，佢對 Krishna 純粹嘅愛種 prema 咧，就變咗係轉化成呢個物質世界慾望嘅色欲。
And as Krishna's verse continues, that when the lust is unsatisfied, then it turns into wrath or anger.
咁 Krishna 繼續咁解釋，當呢種嘅色欲唔得到滿足嚟講咧，馬上嚟講就會係轉化成係憤怒。
And then from wrath or anger, we come into the point of illusion. We forget who we are.
咁當憤怒嚟講，再進一步嚟講發展成嚟講，我哋係變成一個喺幻象當中，我哋係忘記咗我哋係邊一個。
And we continue in our material existence because of that.
由於咁樣嚟講咧，我哋繼續我哋呢個物質嘅存在。
Just like in chapter 2, when we contemplate the object of the senses, we develop attachment.
就好似第二章入邊講到，當我哋係注視凝視想住呢啲咁嘅感官對象嚟講，我哋就會產生依附。
From attachment comes lust or desire to enjoy.
由呢啲咁嘅依附嚟講，就我哋產生嘅慾望嚟講係想去享受啊，想去擁有佢。
And when lust is unfulfilled, then it turns into anger.
當呢種咁嘅色欲唔能夠滿足嚟講咧，就會係轉化成係憤怒。
From anger, we become illusion.
由憤怒嚟講咧，係產生一個幻象。
And then we lose our memory of who we are.
當我哋係處於幻象當中嚟講，我哋就係唔記得我哋係乜嘢。
And when the memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. Our discriminatory nature is lost.
當我哋個處於幻象，我哋嘅智慧迷失嗰陣時嚟講咧，我哋就唔記得咗我哋係邊一個身份喺度。
Therefore, we just remain repeatedly, life after life after life in the material world.
咁變咗我哋係一生復一世咁樣嚟講，係停留喺呢個物質世界度。
So it's called the greatest enemy of the living entity.
所以點解呢啲係被稱為呢個生物體嚟講最大嘅一個敵人？
Because this is what keeps us bound up in the material energy. This is what keeps us entangled in the material energy.
就係呢啲嘢嚟講，將我哋捆綁喺呢個物質能量，就係呢啲嚟講，令到個生物體嚟講係處於呢個物質能量當中。
So one of the keys for this is, they say nip it in the bud in Hong Kong, like nip it in the bud. Like you want a plant, you take the plant out. Anyway, that didn't work. So, try to read it. They say nip it in the bud here. Nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. No, catch it before it grows. Like a plant has a bud on it. A weed has a bud on it, and you take that bud off so that it doesn't grow. They don't have a saying like that.
I understand the
Okay, we have that in the U.S. English, which we can edit from this class. And in other words, from the very beginning, from the time that we come in contact with this, we have to identify the desire changing from Krishna to material energy.
當我哋開始去接觸呢個物質能量嚟講咧， 我哋對 Krishna 嘅個愛嚟講咧，就受到呢啲嘅物質能量嚟講係影響，佢產生變化。
And then when the material energy transforms from goodness into passion, we need to catch it right away.
咁當呢種嘅能量嚟講，呢個善良形態轉化成呢個激情屬性嗰時嚟講，馬上我哋要係察覺得到，係掌握住佢。
So one way of avoiding these lusty tendencies is rather than letting the passion of lust go into ignorance, which creates anger, which creates illusion, which keeps us in this material world, if we can just catch it and bring it up to the mode of goodness, we have a chance.
就當我哋係察覺到呢種嘅善形態代入呢個激情形態嚟講咧，我哋馬上去插住點樣去將佢係捉住翻嚟喺度，唔好俾佢再繼續去變轉落去，去到呢個跟住呢個愚昧形態喺度啊，或者跟轉到憤怒啊咁樣落去喺度。
Goodness is actually the prescribed method of how we live. We should situate ourselves in the mode of goodness because it saves us from the degradation of the wrath and lust of the material energy.
咁善良形態嚟講，個好好嘅一個處方呢個方法啦，將我哋點樣嚟講，幫我哋唔會再墮落到去呢個激情形態或者愚昧形態嗰度。
So this is all given to us by our independence.
咁呢啲全部係俾我哋點樣嚟講？我哋嗰個自由意願啊，我哋個獨立嚟講可以係做得到。
We misuse our independence.
但係我哋誤用咗呢啲咁嘅自由意願啲獨立。
And when our service attitude, which is inherent within the soul, when it becomes contaminated by this, we transform our propensity for service into our enjoying sense, our enjoying propensity.
原本我哋靈魂嚟講咧，有一個係服務嗰個心水嘅心態嘅本性係喺度嘅。但係當我哋呢個接觸呢個物質能量嚟講，呢種咁嘅服務嘅本性咧，轉化成嚟講，變成我自己想成為一個享受者。
So we have to understand this independence a little bit because sometimes people ask, well, if Krishna doesn't want us to be bad, why does he give us independence so we have a choice?
咁有啲人就我哋想呢個獨立啊，或者係自己作主嚟講呢方面嚟講想更多些少，因為有人會提出呢個問題如果 Krishna 嚟講，我想唔想我哋係做一啲唔好嘅或者變壞嘅嚟講，點解去俾呢個獨立啊呢個自由意願俾我哋有個自由嘅選擇咧？
Because without that ability or that facility to choose to serve Krishna or to not serve Krishna, then that wouldn't be normal.
咁如果冇呢咁嘅個選擇或者啲咁嘅能力俾我哋係服務 Krishna 或者唔服務 Krishna 嚟講，變咗嚟講係唔係好正常喺度？
In other words, that'd be like being in solitary confinement in a prison. We'd have no freedom, no free will, no free anything.
咁就好似我哋譬如係運喺一個監獄嗰度嚟講咧，我哋冇所謂嘅一個自由係可以係講。
But at the same time, because we misuse something that's been given to us, doesn't mean the person that gave it to us is responsible for our misuse of it.
咁唔係代表嚟講一個人係我哋受到咁，由於係困喺呢個或者坐緊監嚟講呢種咁嘅狀態底下嚟講，係由於嗰人俾我哋嘅自由意願底下令到我哋咁唔係咁樣。
I think the other day I gave an example of say the purpose or the use of the cup is to hold some liquid or something in it.
咁就好似我講個例子喺度，就好似個杯咧，杯嘅功能嚟講咧，就係俾我哋載水喺度或者擺一啲液體喺入邊嘅。
But if I misuse the cup and think it's a hammer, then it's not going to be in its proper position. It's going to smash.
咁但係我誤用咗嚟講，唔係我哋係個工人嚟講用咗載水，而將佢好似隨即我哋揼嗰時嚟講咧，馬上嚟講個杯就會打爛嘅。
If you can just take a moment to understand that this material creation is given by the Lord for all of us conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful desires, lustful propensities you could call.
咁呢個物質世界嘅創造嚟講，就係俾我哋生物體為咗滿足我哋呢個享受啊，即係個慾望啊，而係俾創造出嚟嘅度。
And how Krishna creates this material energy is Om Purnam Adapurnam Midam Purnam Purnam Udanchate. The Supreme Lord is perfect and complete, and everything emanating from Him is also perfectly complete and within itself.
咁就睇個詩節喺度啦，至尊會書講到，尊主嚟講係完美嘅，所以由佢而出嚟衍生啊，擴出嚟講咧，亦都係完美嘅無效。
So Krishna completely arranges this material energy for us to try to fulfill these lusty desires in the material world, be it whatever it may be we're attached to, just to confine us in this material world, just to baffle us.
咁 Krishna 嚟講創造咗物質世界嚟講咧，就係俾生物體嚟講為咗滿足佢自己嘅物質慾望啦，然後俾佢我哋再將我哋捆綁或者困於呢個物質嘅能量當中嗰度。
And becoming bewildered is actually a good thing.
咁受到呢方面嘅迷惑，其實喺另一方面嚟講係一件好事嚟嘅。
Especially for humans.
特別嚟講係對人類而言啦。
Because when things don't go right, we have to ask why.
當一啲事情嚟講唔係進展得好順利嗰陣時嚟講，我哋就會問點解會咁樣？
And we begin to inquire, why is this happening like this? It doesn't seem normal.
咁我哋就會開始就會問喺度，點解會係咁事情發展到咁樣喺度？好似唔係咁正常喺度。
This doesn't really fit within my transcendental nature.
呢個嚟講啊，同我原本嘅超然嘅本性嚟講咧，唔係咁配合恰當配合。
Therefore, we have that first aphorism, Jignasa, I got it. That we should inquire about the supreme being, the supreme entity.
咁於是我哋開始去詢問呢個至尊嘅個人物係點樣係乜嘢。
Okay. So Krishna is actually what did you say? The origin of everything is Krishna, and therefore the origin of lust is also in the supreme. But that's called prema.
咁其實所有嘢咧 ，Krishna 係所有嘢嘅源頭，任何嘢都由 Krishna 而嚟嘅。咁對 Krishna 亦都係有個慾望喺度，但係呢個 Krishna 係純粹嘅愛，叫做係純粹嘅愛嘅 prema， 唔係物質世界嘅所謂嘅色慾。
Now even lust and anger can be, or desire and anger, or lust and anger, or lust and wrath, they can actually be engaged in Krishna's service. And the example Prabhupada often gave was Arjuna was fighting in the battle. Definitely there's anger and wrath there. Or Hanuman was taking care of, trying to serve Ram.
咁其實啲色慾又好或者憤怒都好，其實都可以用係對 Krishna 嘅服務喺度。咁包多時會舉一個例子，就好似阿 Arjuna 喺個戰場上嗰度係戰鬥嚟講，一定係有個憤怒喺度。咁同樣嚟講，哈魯文嚟講咧，佢係服務佢嘅主人係打仗，你打嗰陣時嚟講，佢都有個憤怒。
So we can understand that if we can perform or execute our duties according to the injunctions of the scriptures, following them faithfully, we become free from the bondage of this material energy.
如果我哋係跟隨經典，係忠心耿耿咁跟隨經典嘅訓令去行事，執行我哋嘅職務嘅活動嚟，我哋就可以擺脱呢個物質世界嘅捆綁。
But if we continue to misuse that independence, because the first reason is that we become envious of the Lord, and we want to misuse this material energy, and we disregard the teachings of Krishna, then we are ruined. We have no chance of understanding our true spiritual nature.
咁由於我哋嚟講係嫉妒住喺度啦，而我哋亦都唔根據或者唔理會經典入嘅教導喺度，咁所以我哋係變到係咁糟糕嘅而家咁嘅田地喺度。
Even a person of knowledge, he acts according to his nature. We have a particular nature, just like Arjuna had a nature, Hanuman had a nature, but they utilize those in the service of Krishna.
咁每一個人嚟講，佢有佢自己本身嗰個性情啊、本性喺度。咁佢應該根據自己本性嘅性情嚟講，佢係行事。咁就好似Arjuna又好，或者講哈魯文又好。
Just like this is the verse I learned when I first joined the Hare Krishna movement. Indriyani Artesya, Rtadhvaja Swami Diorna Vamsam Anga Chek Tauhyasya Paripantina. there are principles to regulate attachment and aversion.
咁呢個就係我第一個師節啦。當我係參加Hare Krishna 運動嗰時，咁呢個師節係話有啲係嘅規範，有啲嚟講我哋可以係跟隨去做。
Attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and the objects of the senses.
咁呢啲咁嘅依附啊，或者係嘅感官嚟講咧，我哋根據嚟講可以係避免得到，跟住呢啲規範去做。
And we should not become under the influence of this attachment and aversion, because this will cause us to stumble in our path of spiritual life.
咁呢種嘅依附或者係拒絕嚟講會係喺我哋嘅靈修路途上嚟講咧，係一種係障礙嚟嘅。
In this commentary, Prabhupada had wrote that those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification.
咁聖泡泡要此提到咧，當呢個修行嘅人士嚟講，或者係收集 Krishna 知覺人嚟講，佢係唔願意唔想有呢啲咁嘅物質感官嘅享樂。
If we're engaged in Krishna consciousness, we get a higher taste. Param Dristvani Vartante, we get a higher taste, and therefore the lower taste automatically go down.
當我哋係收集 Krishna 知覺嗰做嘅活動嚟講，我哋會係得到更高嘅品味。當我哋更高嘅品味嚟講，呢啲低級嘅趣味呢啲品味嚟講咧，我哋自然會係放棄。
Therefore, we have this verse that the principles to regulate attachment and aversion to the senses and the objects is part of our process.
所以我哋有呢個支持團提到就係話，無論我哋依附或者係抗拒呢啲咁嘅感官對象嚟講咧，咁係有一個程序，我哋跟住咁樣做就可以做到。
This is instruction for those of us who aren't fully Krishna conscious.
咁呢個嚟講係一個教導啦，俾我哋所有嘅人嚟講咧，係想完全係處於 Krishna 知覺去做。
As we were saying, one who is naturally or in Krishna consciousness is naturally reluctant to engage in sinful activities. But if we're not in that level, then we follow these rules and regulations.
咁就好似講到，就一個完全處於 Krishna 知覺嚟講咧，佢就唔會再係做啲淨係享受啲感官嘅享樂喺度。但係對一啲嚟講仍然未做到嚟講咧，就要有呢啲咁嘅規範守則嚟講咧，係要跟隨咁去做。
It's interesting that this verse, the next verse comes up, that it's better to perform one's own duties imperfectly than another person's duties perfectly.
咁好有趣到啦，跟住個詩詞就係講到一個人即使係做自己嘅職責嘅嚟講做得唔完美都好過嚟講係做一啲唔係佢自己做嘅一個本分嘅職責嘅活動。
Because to follow another person's path is actually dangerous.
因為跟隨另一個人嘅一個途徑啊去做嚟講咧，咁其實係危險嘅。
It's explained that we should all follow our prescribed duties, but we do it in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. We take our duties, our prescribed duties, and we perform them in Krishna consciousness rather than trying to engage in some other person's duties.
我哋應該係做我哋既定附定嘅一個責任，就係用 Krishna 知覺意識嘅情況底下，就係做啲附屬責任，係好過你做一啲另外一啲人嘅一個職責嘅活動。
Our prescribed duties are given according to one's, would you say, involvement in the modes of material nature, and Prabhupada uses a nice word here, psychophysical condition, under the spell of material nature. So spiritual duties are ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna.
咁講到一個人你個固定嘅職責嚟講，根據係處於一個唔同嘅一個物質形態底下而去做，咁包括用到個字嚟講就係心理或者係一個狀況都喺度。咁呢個就係根據一個靈性導師一個人嘅靈修方面嚟講個本性係點樣，然後靈性導師俾佢一個責任就去做。
We still have several verses to go through, so we'll continue here.
咁仲有幾個詩節啦，咁我哋係繼續講落去度。
I think you'll be able to just, I'll make it easy for you so you don't have to like search. The nature of lust or desire. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entities are covered by different degrees of lust.
就好似煙咧有隻火咧，俾煙係籠罩住喺度，就好似係鏡咧俾塵封住。咁呢個胎兒你個胎胚胎嚟講喺個肚腹媽媽肚腹子宮入邊係冚住一樣。咁所以唔同嘅程度嘅慾望嚟講，受啲唔同嘅一個形態嚟講係覆蓋住。
And with these descriptions, we understand that the living entity's pure consciousness, it actually becomes covered by this, I guess it's our eternal enemy of lust, we could call it, as in reverse, but it never satisfies. That's the nature.
咁就好似呢度嚟講嘅，純粹嘅靈魂係受啲唔同嘅一個程度啊，呢個覆蓋喺度嘅，好似我頭先講到呢係我哋嘅永恆嘅敵人喺度，就係受唔同程度呢個覆蓋嚟講咧，係冚住我哋個真真正正嘅一個本性。
And it burns like fire. That's the nature. It burns like fire.
咁呢啲我哋嘅物質慾望嚟講，就好似係火一般咁喺燃燒住。
There's a verse in the Manu Samhita that describes that lust can never be satisfied by any amount of material sense gratification, inasmuch as a fire cannot be extinguished by putting more fuel in it.
咁好似喺萬柳讚嚟講，有提到就係我哋嘅物質慾望嚟講，唔可以用任何嘅一個滿足啲物質慾望方法嚟講係滿足我哋嘅慾望嘅。咁個例子就好似啲火咁啦，啲火嚟講你唔可以話係咁加柴落去咧，係令到啲火嚟講就可以將佢熄滅，係冇可能嘅。
The example in the purport is quite interesting because the material world, the center of all activities is sex desire.
咁好有趣啦！喺要旨入邊提到，咁喺呢個物質世界所個慾望嘅一個中心嚟講，就係以係色慾啊性方面嚟講係為一個中心嘅。
Thus, the material world is called Maitunya Agra, or the shackles of sex life.
所以物質世界嚟講就係叫做性慾嘅一個枷鎖喺度。
Okay, like in jail, or a person that's incarcerated in prison, we are kept behind the bars.
就好似係一個人如果監獄嚟講咧，喺個牢個牢籠嗰啲入邊嗰度係鎖住喺入邊喺度，囚禁住喺度。
And those who are, I will probably use the word here, similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life in this world. 咁啲人嚟講係唔跟隨至尊主嘅一個訓令底下嚟講咧，佢就受呢啲嘅色慾嗰啲枷鎖嚟講係俾佢鎖住嘅。So advancement in material society based on this sense gratification, what does it do? It increases the duration of our existence within the material energy. 咁就係呢啲咁嘅色慾嚟講，令到嚟講我哋係更加捆綁自己喺度啦，令到我哋更加長期咁樣係受捆綁喺呢個物質世界嗰度。The person engaged in sense gratification may feel some happiness. 啲人處於呢個物質嘅感覺享樂嚟講咧，或者係感到有啲所謂嘅一個係享受啊快樂。But that so-called feeling of happiness is actually the enemy, as we described from the 5th chapter, that Dehi Samsparsa Jabhoga. When those who are intelligent, they don't utilize their senses in the object of the senses. 咁其實呢啲所謂嘅一個法律講，就係享受嘅法律嚟講，就係一種嘅係我哋嘅敵人喺度。就好似第5章入邊講到啊，呢啲咁嘅慾望嚟講，最後嚟講係令到我哋係更加係痛苦喺度，係我哋嘅敵人。如果有智慧嚟講，我哋應該係明白到呢一點。This is an example we had when I first joined the movement many decades ago. 咁好多年前嚟講，當我係參加上之國嚟講咧，就有咁嘅例子，有咁嘅例子。It's called like we're literally shackled within this material energy. 咁我哋好似譬如講就好似一個物質世界俾個手扣鎖住我哋係一樣喺度。The so-called temporary pleasure of sex life is so strong that what we do is we think that the shackles are golden and they have jewels on them. 咁呢啲嘅喺世界所謂嘅性啊，啲咁嘅色慾嚟講咧，鎖住我哋咧，令到我哋誤以為嚟講呢啲咁嘅手鐐啊，鎖住個手鐐嚟講就係好矜貴喺度啊，好似啲金咁樣啊，又好似有珠寶箱喺度係咁珍貴。And even though we're bound and we're chained to the wall in the prison, my chains are so good. Look at those gems, look at those jewels, it's so beautiful.
即使我哋俾啲咁嘅手鐐啦，咁鎖住都好喺度啦，或者係囚禁將個監獄喺度啦。當我哋睇到呢啲咁嘅手鐐嚟講，你覺得啊，你睇呢度用金做喺度嘅，哇！呢啲雙面珠寶喺度嘅，覺得係好值得我哋咁樣做，或者好開心喺度。
We become so bewildered that even Indra, we know this story, even Indra made an offense and had to take birth as a hog.
咁我哋都聽過故事啦，哇！即使係呢個係Indra 喺度啊，佢都係犯過咁嘅錯誤冒犯嚟講，投生成一隻豬嘅。
I guess we could call Indra the temple commander of the heavenly planet. I mean, he's managing up there. He's like one of the managers of the heavenly planets.
咁就好似我哋其實可以講係稱Indra 天帝嚟講，就好似個廟宇嘅廟長咁樣去管理一切嘅事務。咁天帝嚟 Indra 亦都係咧，喺天堂嚟講，所有天堂嘅事務嚟講，佢係負責去管理嘅。
So things started being mismanaged.
咁所以你覺得我唔喺度就變咗好多係搞唔掂啊，處理唔好。
It was a big disturbance. Anytime there's mismanagement, it's a big disturbance.
咁當你處理唔好嗰時嚟講，就好大嘅混亂喺度。
Even Lord Brahma went down and said, Indra.
咁當呢件事發生之後嚟講咧，Lord Brahma 自己親身都走去要處理翻搞掂呢件事。
You're a hog now. You're actually Indra on this heavenly planet.
咁嗰時 Brahma Indra 嚟講係唔記得咗自己本身係天帝嘅身份，以為自己係隻豬喺度。於是 Lord Brahma 就同佢講：你記唔得你本身嚟講係天帝嚟㗎，你唔係隻豬嚟㗎。
Please come out. Please come back and help us manage the heavenly planets.
佢快啲翻上去天堂嗰度嚟講咧，天堂嚟講需要你個管理喺度，快啲上面搞到亂晒龍喺度，冇咗你。
Oh no! I cannot leave. Look at how beautiful my pig wife is, and how cute my little piglets are that I'm playing with all day long.
咁跟住佢就同 Lord Brahma 咁講：唔得，我呢個豬太太幾靚喺度啊！你睇我啲豬仔豬女嚟講幾得意幾開心啊，同我一齊喺度。
That's extreme bewilderment.
佢係完全係極度嘅呢個受迷惑啊！
I mean, even the king of the heavenly planets
咁你即使嚟講天帝喺度啊，天堂星宿一個
becomes so bewildered by the affection for his pig wife and the piglet kids.
但係
It's just inconceivable.
你係想像係唔到喺度嘅，佢受啲咁嘅豬太太啊、豬啊仔女嚟講，呢啲咁嘅愛心喺度受佢哋迷惑嘅。
I think somehow I can't remember the end of the story, but I think they convinced him.
因為我唔係咁記得即係嗰個故事，就你哋諗起最後嚟講係翻上去天堂做天帝嘅。
So these golden shackles, these bejeweled golden shackles, that sense of gratification we get there binds us.
所以呢啲所謂嘅手鐐喺度啊，咁即使佢睇起上嚟好似係鑲滿呢啲珠寶啊啲金銀喺度嚟講，就係呢啲咁嘅嘢嚟講，你將我哋係捆綁住喺呢個物質世界。
Therefore, it's the most sin. What is that person? Most sinful enemy of the living entity, because it binds us in this material world.
所以點解會稱之為呢個係最大惡極罪人喺度？因為佢係將個物質你咪捆綁啲生物體捆綁呢個物質世界。
So then one probably would say here, one may ask, where do we find this lust? Where does it reside?
咁跟住有啲人就會咁樣問喺度咧，究竟呢個色欲嚟講，究竟我哋點樣去揾到出嚟咧？究竟佢係匿埋喺邊度咧？
So Krishna says, Indriyamana buddhi, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust.
咁 Krishna 就講我哋嘅感官啦，我哋嘅心意，我哋智慧啦，呢三個地方嚟講就係色欲匿埋嘅地方。
And it covers our understanding, our knowledge of the living, this bewilders the knowledge of the individual living entity here, and it just, bewilders, and then we fall into the material pool, and it just keeps on down.
就係呢啲嚟講咧，將我哋係覆蓋我哋喺度啦，令到我哋個知識係個智慧係迷亂喺度。嗱，跟住頭先講就係跟住係會跌再墮喺呢個物質嘅池，物質嘅世界嘅一個池。
This is a very interesting purport.
呢個好有趣嘅一個要旨。
I'll just do one couple of sentences. The enemy, who's the enemy? Remember?
咁我想講嘅敵人究竟邊個係呢咁嘅敵人係邊乜嘢咧？
The all-devouring sinful enemy of the world, of the living entity is
last desire。
Kama, lust. Kama.
就吞噬一切嘅罪惡嘅敵人嚟講咧，就係色欲 karma。
The enemy has captured, the enemy, lust is the enemy of the living entity, this most sinful the most sinful thing, has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul.
咁呢個色欲嚟講就係征服啊迷住我哋身體所有嘅感官嘅一切生物嘅身體上所有嘅感官嘅一切。
So Krishna wants to give him a hint.
Krishna 係俾咁 Krishna 俾咗個暗示俾我哋，拋開咁樣講。
Of those places so that we will know where we can go to conquer the enemy. Because if we know where he's at, we can find him.
咁呢個就係呢一個地方嚟講 ，Krishna 俾個暗示我哋講係啲地方係喺邊度，而我哋就可以喺啲地方嚟講揾到啲嘢出嚟，喺度係點樣係可以係降服佢哋嘅。
Nowadays we don't even know where the enemy's at.
而家甚至乎有啲人都唔知道我哋嘅敵人係喺邊度。
They can blow up a bus over here. They can, take over a building there. It's just we don't know. They just pop here, pop there. But we have distinct information where this lust resides.
咁而家我哋個好清晰一個資料喺度，知道個敵人喺邊度。如果唔係個敵人嚟講，應該喺呢度彈出嚟，呢度彈出嚟，又喺嗰度彈出嚟，就為一張棟大廈嚟講，全部係征服一切。
So these strategic positions, we have the ability to conquer over the enemy, but now we have to understand that the senses are there, indriya. The senses are there, and the mind is the center of all the activities of the senses.
咁呢度係講到個策略，我哋係點樣去做，點樣控制到？首先嚟講，我哋知道我哋嘅感官啦。咁而我哋嘅心意嚟講呢，就係感官嘅一個中心點嚟嘅，控制中心嚟嘅。
What we have the senses and we have the mind now.
咁我哋而家知道有兩嘢，就係我哋嘅感官啦。感官跟住有一個中心，個中心嚟講就係我哋心意。
When we talk at this level of the sense, there's two types of senses: working senses and there's knowledge-acquiring senses. And then there's the mind.
咁我哋知道嚟講咧，就係感官有兩種，一種嚟講做活動嘅感官啦，一種嚟講就係獲取知識嘅一種感官喺度。咁除咗呢種感官之外嚟講，跟住我哋就我哋嘅心意。
And so when the senses, knowledge-acquiring senses, they bring in knowledge, they bring in information. They're like, they have computers that bring in information to the main computer or something. I think they have something.
咁一種就係為幫我哋獲得知識資訊嘅感官喺度，就好似譬如我一部電腦嚟講啦，係從好多唔同嘅資訊或者啲嘅數據嚟講咧，係被輸入個電腦一樣。
So when the mind hears about these different sense objects, then what happens, the mind generates or becomes the focus of all the ideas that knowledge-acquiring senses are giving us. Where can I find satisfaction?
咁當我哋有啲咁嘅資訊，有咩嘅個數據進入我哋個腦海嗰時嚟講咧，咁個腦海嚟講馬上會產生嚟講一啲咁嘅回應喺度嚟講我點可以從呢啲咁嘅資訊、呢啲嘅數據喺度或者啲資料嚟講咧，我可以係揾到嘅感官享樂。
So the mind becomes a repository of all these different ideas of sense gratification, and then what Prabhupada means is that the mind now becomes the repository of this lusty desires.
嗱，跟住就從呢啲咁嘅揾到千方百計嚟講係點樣嚟講係做到個感官享樂喺度，跟住我哋嚟講就會產生呢個慾望依附開始咁樣嘅而嚟。
This is a really interesting part of the commentary.
咁呢個就係好有趣個喺呢個要旨個評注嚟講嘅好有趣嘅地方。
We have the sense objects which are stronger than our senses.
咁有一個感官嘅對象嚟講咧，係比我哋嘅感官更加係強烈嘅。
Remember I said that the other day? I said it twice since I've been here.
咁我
The sense objects are stronger than our senses.
咁我記得我喺呢度嚟講過兩次喺度嘅，就係我哋感官對象嚟講咧，係比我哋嘅感官嚟講對我哋影響更加強烈嘅。
Anybody remember the example I gave?
記唔記得我上次舉個例子係乜嘢咧？
You walk down the street
你行去街嗰度啦，
and you smell
咁你係聞到啲嘢，
a bakery.
咁呢個係啲牛肉嗰啲嘢。
And you immediately want to buy some bread. You walk by a pizza place. You want to have some pizza.
咁 咁去到啲披薩店嗰啲咧，跟住我哋聞到陣味喺度嘔香，跟住我哋走去呢個披薩店嘅地方咧，我哋就想買個披薩食。
So that scent, that's not sense, but that scent that is given as a sense object. Scent is a sense object. So our ability to smell overcomes us and forces us in one way to become engaged in gratifying ourselves through these different things that come through our knowledge acquiring senses.
咁呢種嘅感覺嚟講，呢種嘅氣味嚟講咧，馬上嚟講係透過呢個感官嘅對象，呢個披薩嚟講咧，就傳入我哋腦海喺度。咁當我哋腦海嚟講咧，跟住我哋呢啲咁嘅所謂獲到啲咁嘅信息喺度咧，就係個披薩喺度，跟住我哋諗中呢種嘅味道，於是我哋就想走去買翻嚟嚟講，係滿足我哋嘅感官。
Now we have the sense object.
咁我哋個感官對象啦，
The senses are being defeated.
咁我哋感官嚟俾佢係征服咗啦。
And the mind becomes a repository for sense gratification.
然後馬上我哋嘅心意嚟講咧，受到呢個反應回報嚟
Therefore, the
講，
mind is now involved.
嗱跟住我哋嘅心意嚟講就開始係涉及落去呢個感官對象嘅一個反應嗰度。
And then Prabhupada says, next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of lusty propensities.
嗱泡泡就
The intelligence department is like a corporation. The sense objects, the senses, the mind, the intelligence, it's all part of a corporate structure.
咁 top 係講到我哋嘅智慧咧，就成為一個叫統領嘅一個部門喺度，就將頭先所講嘅感官啦、個心意喺度啦，所有呢啲嘢嚟講，又點樣係將佢哋配合，將佢係點樣做一個統領佢哋點樣去做喺度。
Now, what happens here is that we have the senses, which are knowledge acquiring. We have the sense objects, which are removed from us. But the mind is right within, it's right here in the heart, the mind. It's not the brain. The brain is just like the TV set that's getting information from the TV producing place.
咁我哋有我哋嘅感官對象嗰度啦，跟住我哋有我哋嘅一個行動嚟講，我點樣得到感官？咁跟住我哋唔係講我哋嘅腦諗嘅嘢，腦諗嘅嘢就好似其實一個顯示一個顯示屏一樣嚟講，就係一個對象咧點樣係閃出一啲嘢喺度，真正做一個決定嘅時候嚟講，我哋內心一個心意喺度，內心。
So the intelligent department, it becomes the capital. In other words, the top level of all these lusty propensities. The thing is that intelligence, we have the senses, then we have the mind, then we have the intelligence, and the intelligence is the next door neighbor of the spirit soul.
咁跟住我哋喺講道嚟講，我哋有我哋嘅感官啦，我哋有我哋嘅活動啊，或者獲取知識嘅感官，跟住我哋嘅心意，心意之上嚟講就個統領嘅中心喺度就係呢個智慧啦。咁講到智慧嚟講就係係個靈魂嘅旁邊一個窗戶咁樣。
So from lusty intelligence, it influences the spirit. What do you call it? Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire false ego and identify ourselves with matter, and thus with the mind, and thus with the senses, and thus with the sense object.
咁由於呢種咁嘅色欲嘅影響之下嚟講，我哋嘅智慧嚟講咧，變成一個色欲嘅物質欲望。咁呢個一啲嘅色欲嘅智慧嚟講，首先嚟講，變成我哋一個形成咗我哋個真正嘅假我出現先，由我假我嚟講再回歸翻，令到我哋認同咗呢個物質身體，由呢個物質身體將住我哋嚟講，我哋嘅智慧啊，我哋嘅心意，我哋感官嚟講咧，完全係受啲呢個物質喺嗰個物質嘅色欲嘅智慧影響底下嚟講，係認同咗呢個假我。
And as we repeatedly engage in the activities of material sense gratification, trying to satisfy ourselves, which cannot happen here, we become addicted to that attempt to try to satisfy.
咁當我哋重複又重複係做呢啲咁嘅活動，嘗試喺度呢啲活動嚟講係滿足我哋嘅個物質嘅慾望嚟講咧，即使我哋係重複再重複嚟講做多次嚟講咧，但係永遠都係唔能夠得到滿足咁。
I just wanted to read this one little thing here.
咁我想係讀呢度一啲啲喺度。
There's two verses. What's the word? This verse. Nakartutam nakarmani. Lokasha. The spirit soul master the city of the body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act.
咁佢講呢個物質世一個靈魂嚟講係處於個呢個物質軀體入邊之後嚟講咧，佢係冇做任何嘅嘢，亦都唔會令到呢個物質身體嚟講去做任何嘅活動喺度。
We don't even create the fruits of our activities.
咁即使我哋根本就冇做到我哋所做活動嘅一個結果，冇形成呢個做活動嘅結果喺度。
This is all done by material nature.
所有呢啲嘅結果嚟講咧，係由物質自然底下形成。
Material nature is composed of goodness, passion, and ignorance.
而物質自然嚟講咧，由善良啦、激情啦同埋愚昧形態嚟組成。
The next verse is, the Supreme Lord, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities.
咁至尊主嚟講咧，每一個嘅所謂嘅虔誠嘅活動或者罪嘅活動嚟講咧，係唔係由至尊主嚟講令到佢哋咁樣做
？But we are bewildered because of ignorance, which covers our true knowledge of who we are as spirit soul.
由於我哋個真正嘅智慧受到蒙蔽底下，我哋忘記咗我哋真正嘅身份，我哋一個靈魂。
So in that bewildered condition, this is one of my favorite purports. As there are many.
咁呢個係其中一個我好中意一個要旨喺度。咁當我哋受到迷惑底下咧
，Therefore the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment.
咁我呢個受體棍靈魂喺度有無盡、無始無盡嘅一個慾望底下嚟講咧，跟住佢就忘記咗係避免佢哋自己原本係 Krishna 知覺嘅身份嘅。
By our immemorial desire to avoid Krishna.
咁呢個就係我哋嘅無盡嘅慾望嘅底下，我哋想係避免嚟講係接近 Krishna。
Because the material energy has convinced us that we are the owners, we're the controllers, and we are the enjoyers.
因為物質能量嚟講咧，係令到我哋相信嚟講，我哋個享受者啦，我哋個擁有者喺度啦，我哋一個係擁有者啦，享受者喺度。
And you'll see that present within any form of life.
你都睇到嚟講咧，呢樣嘢嚟講，任何嘅生命形式係都係存在嘅。
I have a friend when he goes to Rtadhvaja, there's always a group of dogs that hangs out where our apartments are.
咁好似譬如我哋去Rtadhvaja嚟講咯，見到係我哋周邊嚟講都好多一群啲狗喺度。
And he always names the tough dog City Boss.
咁我哋係見到係好似一啲係。
He's the boss of the city.
咁佢個好似一個城市入邊啲老細咁樣嘅。
Yeah, and he walks around like he's the boss, you know.
咁佢哋就係好似大搖大擺咁樣係行嚟行去。
That's his bewilderment.
呢個就係佢哋受到個困惑迷惑喺度。
So by our immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, we become bewildered.
由於我哋個無始無盡呢咁嘅慾望底下嚟講，我哋係避免係同 Krishna 一齊喺度，所以令到我哋有咁樣嘅處境。
Through that process of being engaged, kamadesha, krodesha, rajaguna, when this lust is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world, and it destroys our ability to understand our true identity.
咁就係呢啲個色欲嚟講，令到我哋嚟講係毀掉咗我哋呢一生喺度，我哋令到我哋嚟講係忘記咗我哋真正嘅身份。
Again, by our immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, we create our own bewilderment, and consequently, although we are constitutionally eternal, full of knowledge, and full of happiness, due to the littleness of our existence, we forget this position.
咁原本我哋真正身份嚟講係充滿知識、永恆同埋快樂嘅。由於呢啲個無始無盡嘅一啲咁嘅慾望咧，令到我哋忘記咗我哋真正嘅身份係乜嘢。
This constitutional position that we have is that we are the servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
我哋最原本嘅一個身份嘅構成嘅身份嚟講，就係 Krishna 一個僕
And
人。
because of our desire to avoid Krishna, we become entrapped in the material energy.
由於我哋係有意係想係避開 Krishna 啦，所以我哋係受到呢個物質世界嘅捆綁。
We can even blame God we'll blame God. It's not me.
但我哋
God
會
gave me independence. It's His fault.
但係我哋就會反而係將呢啲嘢嚟責任係推卸或者係責備係神呢個唔關我事啦咁樣。
Now the solution.
咁呢而家講跟住我哋提到個解決嘅方法，
3 more verses.
再多3個詩節。
When we have a series of verses, then what happens is a word called tasmat, therefore. In other words, the conclusion of these 4, 5, 6, 7 verses is now, therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bhartas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbolist sin, lust, by regulating the senses.
咁好似我哋仲有幾個詩節，好似譬如當有時幾個詩節講完之後，你跟住有一個字叫 tasma 意思嚟講就因此做一個結論咁噶。咁所以 Krishna 就咁講到啦，阿 Arjuna 呢個我哋應該係由一開始嚟講咧，就應該係斬掉呢啲咁嘅色欲啊咁。
And by regulating our senses, utilizing them in the service of the Supreme Lord, regulating them. In other words, I used the word the other day rather than regulations, instruction. We receive these instructions from the scriptures to allow us to exist cooperatively with material energy which is coming from Krishna.
咁我哋要係規範我哋嘅感官喺度啦。咁點樣咧？就係透過跟隨經典規範我哋感官，點樣係好好配合喺呢個物質自然底下嚟講係運用我哋做我哋嘅服務。
So by regulating our senses, we'll be able to slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization, lust.
咁我透過我哋係跟隨經典入邊嘅規範我哋嘅感官之後嚟講，我哋又得到呢個智慧喺度，點樣係斬除呢啲咁嘅物質嘅色欲喺度。
Slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
係殺咗就斬掉呢啲係影響我哋喺個自覺科學嘅一個知識嘅。
What this means is that the great sinful enemy lust, which destroys our urge for self-realization.
意思嚟講，呢啲咁嘅慾望色欲嚟講咧，會係阻礙我哋係呢個衝動係想係達到自覺一個咁嘅衝動喺度。
That's naturally present within the consciousness or within the human body. We have an idea, we have an urge to understand what's going on in the world.
咁因為喺物質喺呢個人類身體嚟講，其實我哋有一種咁嘅衝動係想係了解到究竟嘅物質存在之後嚟講，究竟係之外嚟講係有啲乜嘢，我哋係有呢種咁嘅慾望想去知道呢啲咁嘅嘢。
And specifically knowledge of the self.
特別嚟講，知道咩咧？就係知道係認識自我呢啲嘅知識。
The urge for self-realization and the specific knowledge of the self is destroyed by our engaging our senses in the object of sense gratification and being chained up in the material world. 咁
呢種咁嘅迫切係想有得到一個自我嘅知識或者係認識我自我嚟講咧，受呢啲咁就係呢啲咁嘅色欲嚟講咧，好似一個鎖鏈將我哋捆綁住，同埋阻止我哋係認識到呢方面嘅知識。
This knowledge of the self is called jnana.
呢種咁嘅知識嚟講咧，被稱之為嘅jnana。
Jnana refers to knowledge of the self distinguished from this body.
咁jnana呢種知識嚟講就令到我哋明白到呢個我哋自我同呢個身體嚟講有個區別。
Because they distinguish between ourself and our non-self.
咁我哋其實就好似譬如講到呢個就係真正嘅一個自我，或者一個唔係真正嘅自我。
And we have this word jnana.
我哋有一個字咧叫jnana，
which means knowledge.
嘅意思嚟講就係
Distinguish between self and non-self.
就係知識啦。呢個知識嚟講就係區分到真正嘅自我同埋唔係我哋嘅自我呢個軀體。
And then we have vijnana.
跟住我哋另一個字叫 vijnana。
This refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position in our relationship with the Supreme Soul, Krishna.
呢個就係一個特別嘅一個知識嚟講，明白到嚟講生物體同 Krishna 一個原本嘅關係。
Now this type of knowledge, this vijnana, or this knowledge of the self and the Supreme, this is very confidential.
呢個知識係明白到我哋真正自我，或者明白到我哋同 Krishna 咩關係嚟講，呢啲知識嚟講係好機密嘅。
as described in the 9th chapter, Rtadhvaja that this knowledge is the king of knowledge, the most secret of all secrets.
咁就好似第9章講到呢個知識嚟講呢，係機密之中係最機密嚟講，係所有知識之王。
So this knowledge will give us specific realization, and we can understand who we are and all the aspects of the Supreme Lord Himself.
咁呢個知識嚟講，俾我哋好特別嘅明白到我哋嘅係邊一係身份係咩身份喺度啦，同埋係至尊主係各方面嘅一個特性係乜嘢。
So this Bhagavad Gita, it gives us a general understanding of the specific knowledge of ourselves.
咁呢個博家法國嚟講，俾你一般嘅知識，認識到我哋嘅真正身份係乜嘢。
Maimani Bangso, Jiva Loka, we are eternal parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord.
我係至尊主嘅永恆不可分割嘅部分。
And therefore we're meant to serve the Lord.
所以我哋嘅存在嚟講，要服務至尊主。
That is called Krishna consciousness.
呢個就被稱為 Krishna 知覺。
Krishna consciousness.
Krishna 知覺
Krishna.
就係要知覺到 Krishna。
When we have the knowledge, we become conscious of who we are.
當我哋有呢方面知識，我亦都係知覺到我哋係邊一位。
And when we get vegan knowledge of ourselves in relationship to the Supreme Lord, then we can understand our eternal position.
當我哋有 vegan 呢個知識，明白到我哋同 Krishna 有一個關係係乜嘢嚟講呢？咁我哋又係知道嚟講真正嘅身份啦，我哋係乜嘢。
But many times we say, therefore, from the beginning of our life, we should be engaged in this process of Krishna consciousness.
所以 Paul 好多時提到就係我哋應該開始我哋生命其實一開始嚟講應該係從事嘅 Krishna 知覺嘅活動。
And then we can actually act accordingly.
然後跟住我哋根據呢方面嘅知識嚟講嘢行事。
If we know we're not this body,
如果我哋知道我哋唔係呢個身體，
we're not the senses which are overcome by the objects of the senses.
我哋唔係我哋嘅感官，而呢感官嚟講係被感官嘅物質感官嚟講係控制住。
We're not the mind.
我哋唔係我哋心意，
We utilize our intelligence.
我哋用我哋嘅智慧，
That's not who we are.
但係呢個唔係我哋真正嘅我，
We're the soul inside.
我哋入邊嚟講嘅靈魂。
And so, by following this process that we're describing, our natural loving relationship with the Supreme Lord can manifest.
咁我哋跟住頭先我哋所講呢個程序去收集嚟講，我哋係對至尊主嘅原本嘅一個愛嚟講咧，就會係展示出嚟。
Any questions?
有冇咩問題？
Self-realization can be done by only meditation or you can say chanting or karma yoga, dhyan yoga or bhakti yoga. Out of these, all these three important are it can be self-realization can be done with one only.
咁佢問一個問題嚟講就係話譬如我哋呢個自覺嚟講咧，可以係透過譬如係冥想啦，或者係唱誦，或者我哋有幾個唔同嘅瑜伽嘅程序都得，係咪其實我哋收集其中一個程序嚟講，我哋就可以做到咧？
All the different yogas are stepping stones.
所有唔同嘅瑜伽嚟講，其實係一個踏腳石。
Karma yoga, yadasnasi. What's that word? 9th chapter. Man, that was really a Krishna. Yeah, before then. Oh, yet karoshi, yadasnasi, jet dahosi dadatiya, yet tapasasi punteya, tat purasva mararpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, 927.
Yeah.
And whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me.
咁第9章27個詩節咁講，你係昆蒂嘅兒子啊，無論你做什麼、吃什麼、供奉或施捨什麼、從事什麼苦行，都應該把他們當作給我嘅供奉去做。
This is the description of karma yoga.
呢個就係描述嘅對呢個 karma yoga 個活動瑜伽嘅描述。
That no matter what we do, what we eat, what we offer, what charities we give, all these things should be done as a beginning with our learning our loving relationship with Krishna, the Lord.
咁無論我哋所做嘅一切，譬如我哋所食乜嘢啊、供奉乜嘢啊、所有嘅佈施啊、苦行嚟講咧，就係作為一個開始收集呢個瑜伽奉瑜伽呢個開始嘅階段，係點樣開始係對 Krishna 培養個愛。
So the idea is that we should mold our life in such a way through the process of karma yoga, so that we don't forget Krishna at any moment.
嘅意思就係將我哋嘅生活啊嘅生活嘅一切嚟講融入響我 Krishna 嗰度，令到我哋每一刻嚟講咧都唔會係忘記 Krishna。
Just like everyone has to work to maintain their body, so do that work for Krishna.
就好似每一個人你講到嘅工作啦，係為佢嘅生命一樣度，咁你用你嘅工作嚟講係服務 Krishna 啦。
It can be dovetailed through the process of Krishna consciousness.
你將係配合響佢 Krishna 知覺嘅收集當中，
Just like everyone has to eat.
就好似每一個人都要食啦。
But we just honor the foodstuffs offered to Krishna.
但我哋會係榮耀啦，係供奉過俾 Krishna 嘅食物。
Just another, you go to the market, you go to work, you make some money, you go to the market, you shop, you buy some vegetables, you offer the vegetables to Krishna. It's all connected.
就好似我哋工作啦，我哋係賺取一個有一個薪金啦。當我哋係出咗糧之後嚟講，我哋甚至去超市嗰度，我哋買啲係食物啦，又將佢煮成一個食物，跟住係供奉俾 Krishna。所有呢啲嘢都係有連帶性關係嘅。
And this way it allows us to mold our life so we don't forget Krishna.
咁所有一切嚟講就係令我哋係融入係喺 Krishna 嘅知覺當中嚟講，等我哋係記起係 Krishna。
Just like everyone nowadays they're kind of inclined to the meditational processes of this world.
就好似今日嚟講，好多人嚟講比較有興趣係向呢個做呢個冥想。
But these types of processes aren't practical for this age. Our mind is too unsteady in Kali Yuga. It's just too disturbed.
咁但係喺呢個卡年代嚟講唔係好適合喺度，因為我哋嘅心意嚟講係幾咁之波動喺度，係好難嚟講係做到。
Therefore, in this age, the sacrifice, the process of yoga is Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam, Kalo, Nasteva, 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 Gati on the top. Chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name is the only way in Kali Yuga. The only way in Kali Yuga. The only way in Kali Yuga.
所以喺呢個卡利年代嚟講咧，唯一嘅方法嚟講就係唱頌神嘅聖名啦，唱頌神嘅聖名係唱頌神嘅聖名，係再冇其他嘅方法，再冇其他方法，再冇其他嘅方法。
So we can practice.
我哋可以咁樣做。
When you walk into work or however you get to work.
或者我哋係喺Krishna 嘅佢工作嘅路途上嗰度啊，或者行緊嗰度，我哋可以唱 Hare Krishna。
When you're at work, everything in wherever you work, I don't work, an office or something, whatever profession you have, everything that you're seeing in that environment is Krishna.
咁無論你係做咩嘅職業都好喺度啦，喺任何嘅處境環境都好啦，你都可以能夠喺當中嚟講係睇到係 Krishna 喺度。
In the sense that it is an energy of Krishna.
嘅意思嚟講就係話，其實呢啲係 Krishna 嘅能量。
So if we can identify things, Bhumir, Apo, Analo, Vayu, Kama, Buddha, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, if we can see these things in the material world as coming from Krishna,
咁如果我睇到譬
then
如
we'll see Krishna.
咁譬如五大嘅元素啊，譬如泥土水火空氣液態三位自性教喎，咁睇到物質世界所有呢個物質能量嚟講，其實所有呢啲能量都係由 Krishna 而嚟嘅。
Just like when you taste water, the taste of water is Krishna.
就好似譬如我哋飲水嗰陣時，我哋感覺到一個水嘅味道喺
Krishna
度
is。the sun and the moon.
因為 Krishna 嚟講就係水嘅味道喺度，
He's
就係
the
Krishna。
air.
咁 Krishna 係空氣咧，
He's the fire.
佢係火啦。
We utilize all these things all the time.
我哋好多時嚟講都用緊呢啲咁嘅嘢。
We just learn to connect them to Krishna.
我哋學識嚟點樣將佢連上去 Krishna。
Then we can practice meditating on Krishna 24 hours a day.
咁變咗我哋係練習到嚟講24小時都可以冥想住 Krishna。
Specifically by chanting the Maha Mantra on our japa beads.
佢特別係咧，我哋用我哋嘅念珠咧，係唱 Hare Krishna Maha Mantra。
It's described in the scriptures that one who chants the Hare Krishna mantra on his beads is known to be the greatest yogi.
咁喺經典入邊記載啦，當個人要用佢念珠唱 Hare Krishna Mantra嚟講咧，係一個最偉大嘅瑜伽師。
How can we say that?
點解我哋會咁講？
Because yoga means to connect.
因為瑜伽意思嚟講就係聯繫。
The way to connect in this age is Harinam, 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 Devaki.
因為係呢個方法嚟講，喺呢個年代嘅唯一嘅方法嚟講咧，係聯繫上 Krishna， 就係唱唱Krishna 嘅聖名 ，Krishna 嘅聖名 ，Krishna 嘅聖名。
Yoginam Hapi Sadesham, out of all yogas.
在所有嘅瑜伽師當
One who's
中，
conscious of Krishna.
Yes.
He's the highest.
亦知覺到 Krishna 嚟講，你講就係一個最高嘅一個境界。
Even by doing that karma yoga, we actually become freed from the bondage of all our work, whether it's auspicious or inauspicious.
咁當我哋係做呢啲咁嘅活動嚟講，透過咁樣嘅修習瑜伽嚟講咧，咁即使我哋所做嘅，無論係虔誠又好，或者唔虔誠活動嚟講咧，都可以係將佢擺脫出嚟。
In this consciousness that we are the servant of Krishna and we're serving Krishna, then the principle of our renunciation will be there and our liberation will be there and we'll able to go to Krishna.
咁當我哋係咁樣嘅意識底下嚟講咧，所有呢啲咁嘅氣絕啊，所有呢啲咁嘅依附呢啲嚟講，完全係可以做得到喺度，變咗我哋可以係翻到 Krishna 嗰度。
Chant Hare Krishna.
唱唱 Hare Krishna。
I have another question. Although I'm not fully understand
Okay.
what you're talking about for
Neither do I.
today's topic, but in our past I have taken a number of the cars. I know
In the past,
In the past, I have been to Iskcon and I would absorb some of the Asian conscious knowledge, a little bit.
okay.
And then maybe this is not for all the opinion. This is according to my own understanding.
This is not for,
This is according to my own
Okay.
understanding
Okay.
at the moment. But as you said that the spiritual energy is equal to the material energy will begin to relax, right?
the material energy.
Spiritual energy is equal to the material energy.
After. Sorry. Shishi Goritai Ki. Okay, so you can ask.
I'm sorry. Because my tone is information. So you said that Maharaji said that the spiritual energy is made with the material energy will be transferred into the loss or the karma activity, right?
The material energy.
Energy made with the spiritual energy is made with the material energy will transfer into the lax behavior or other karma activity, right?
You understand what she's saying? I don't understand that.
即係佢係話咧，曾經你當一個靈性靈量，呢個遇到一個即係物質嘅能量，咁佢會轉化為一啲色欲嘅或者係點啊
So the contact with the material.
？The contact with the material
then will
transform into the karma
Yes.
karma activity
Yeah,
or
when
lux
we touch material
lux
energy,
thinking, right?
originally we're pure.
Yeah, yes.
When we fall in material energy, we become touched by the modes of material nature.
Yeah.
That's like milk being touched by sour tamarind and becoming yogurt. It's
Yeah.
transformed. It's still it's still milk, but it's yogurt.
Yeah. But everybody know that partner armor is sit in everyone's heart, right?
Yes.
But all the living entities should be possessed of spiritual energy.
The living energy
It's-
should be
that means that all the living energy should be processed of the some of the spiritual energy, because the spiritual energy is protect us, right? Because pranayama, the spiritual sit in our heart, right?
Explain it to him.
即係我哋嗰個超靈係住喺我哋嘅心中啊嘛，係咪？So that our attendance will be on the spiritual, should be on spiritual energy. Why we will be influenced by the material energy when once we meet with some of the karma activities. I mean if we have the protect by the Krishna, because that means our conscience will be on the tendency, our thinking will be a tendency on the spiritual way. Why we will be influenced by the material as all the living entity will be influenced by the spirit, by the material nature.
We're marginal.
Oh, we are margin.
External energy, we're either under the control of material energy or we're under the control of the spiritual energy. We are marginal energy. We are always under the control of one of the two. That is our choice. And we can choose which one we want to associate with. It's not that because Krishna, the form of the Paramatma, is in our heart, that means that we're automatically Krishna conscious. We have to turn to him and ask him to please engage us in his service again. Then we become pure.
咁阿住嘅師講就話唔係 Krishna 喺我哋內心中超你嚟講，好自然我哋馬上嚟講就變得 Krishna 知覺喺度，因為我哋本身係一個嘅邊際能量喺度，邊際嚟講我哋有個選擇，我哋係選擇物質嘅能量或者係靈性嘅能量喺度，所以要我哋自己係請求 Krishna 係俾我哋從事奉獻服務喺度啦，咁我哋先受呢個靈性嘅能量保護喺度。但係由於我哋係拒絕係避開 Krishna 喺度，所以我哋就受呢個物質能量影響底下，所以變成呢個頭先你所講係。受到污染啊，變咗唔得純粹，變咗食慾喺度。之前我講就係我哋唔可以係責怪 Krishna。
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki
jai. Sri Rtadhvaja Swami ki jai.